welcome to Elements of Ayurveda, Empowering Wisdom of Life. I'm your host, Colette, and in this podcast, I hope to empower you to take charge of your own health by sharing the holistic teachings of Ayurveda, the ancient healing tradition from India. We will also discuss topics like health and wellness, nutrition, yoga, fitness, meditation, breath work, and much more, as well as interviewing lots of inspiring people along the way. My humble wish is to help you to connect to your true nature, to Mother Nature, and to each other. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe to the show, and the new episodes will automatically download for you to enjoy. If you're new to Ayurveda, I recommend you listen to the first couple of episodes where I do an introduction to Ayurveda and the mind-body types. I've also set up a Facebook group for us to connect and to support each other, and I'd love for you to join me over at Elements of Ayurveda podcast group. And now, here's the show. Before we start the show today, I want to let you know that on that Elements of Ayurveda podcast Facebook group, I've put up a poll where I'm looking for your feedback for what you want to hear more of as I put together my plan for episodes in 2019. I'd love to hear from you. What episodes do you like? What would you like to hear more of? What topics resonate with you? So please head on over there. The link will be in the show notes to make your suggestions, to have your say in the poll. You can also reach me privately through my website at elementshealingandwellbeing.com. That's elements with an S, healing and A-N-D, wellbeing.com. And now let's get on with the show. Hello and welcome to Elements of Ayurveda. I have Amy with me today. Hi, Amy.
Good morning.
Great to have you. And Amy Wheeler is a regular guest on the podcast. And we did a show, I think it was back early days with Amy talking all about her experience and in yoga therapy. So she adds so much value to this podcast. And I always appreciate your presence here, Amy. So thank you for coming on today. Because today we want to talk about managing anxiety with Ayurveda and Yoga Therapy. Now, anxiety, fear, stress, they really are a normal part of our life experiences. But these are very different from anxiety-related disorders, where a fear or a worry may not go away, and sometimes it may get worse. Now, I pulled up some stats, Amy, from the US about anxiety disorders, and it said that over 40 million Americans are affected by anxiety-related disorders. 40% of American adults have experienced anxiety disorder at some point in their lifetime. Women are twice as likely as men to develop PTSD, but only a third of adults and a fifth of children suffering from anxiety-related disorders receive treatment. Isn't that incredible?
I just think that goes to show how we have completely ignored mental health, at least in the United States. I'm not sure about France. And, we don't consider it an illness like we do asthma or high blood pressure. And so people aren't getting treatment. There's stigma against, asking for help.
Yes.
And clearly from all the things, the terrible, terrible things that are happening in the United States around mass shootings, everyone says, oh, well, it's a mental health problem. I agree. Right. Why don't we do something about that? Why don't we have more mental health services? Why aren't the mental health services included in your health care? Your mind is just as important as your body, if not more important.
Right. And we know now it's all connected. So what happens in our mind affects our physical body. It affects us spiritually. It has to be dealt with holistically. So if we're just treating the physical component of anxiety, whether it's digestive problems or it's, pain or lethargy or diabetes, that's only one part of it. We're not getting to the root of the problem.
Right. And I just want to add on to that because, talking about this body-mind connection and why we should actually have mental health care services for everyone in the United States and the world for that matter. When you look at the fear and anxiety and stress that activates your amygdala, which is this little tiny place deep in your brain that signals fear, survival. You better run. The tiger is chasing you.
Right.
It causes the HPA axis to release cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
Cortisol is related to blood sugar levels, so there's diabetes.
Yep. It's
related to metabolism. There's obesity.
Mm-hmm.
It's related to inflammation. Mm-hmm. Every other disease you ever thought about. Cortisol is connected to memory formation, and we have a huge number of people who are getting, basically type 3 diabetes, which is Alzheimer's. Cortisol has an effect on your blood pressure. Right. So if you just look at how stress and anxiety and fear impact us, not only mentally, but all the things I just listed physically, mm-hmm. It's huge. It's huge.
It is. And in Ayurveda, we would say that all that fear, that stress, that fight or flight response that you're referring to there causes excess vata, right? And it causes excess vata in the Manomaya kosha, which I covered for those of you who are not familiar with the koshas or the 5 sheets or layers of the body. I covered that in detail on podcast number 37. But basically, just to explain a little bit here, the Manomaya kosha, or the 3rd layer, is the mental emotional layer, and it represents our flow of emotions, and it also regulates our physiology, which is the previous layer. And, that's when, like all those things you listed just now, Amy, are affected, because the mental layer, if the flow of emotions are blocked, if that's affected some way by our stresses in our life, the Manomaya kosha supports the Pranamaya and the Annamaya kosha. Now, the Pranamaya kosha may sound familiar because it's the prana, it's the flow of prana in the body. It's the flow of prana to the nadis, which are our subtle energy channels. And these are affected. The chakras don't get energy, they don't spin. And then our whole spiritual progress is doubt or stalled. And then it goes not only to affect this anxiety and stress from the Manomaya kosha, not only affect the Pranamaya, but on the other side, it affects the wisdom kosha and our bliss sheet. So we're not getting that level of consciousness which we desire, because everything is literally just blocked, and then it goes on to affect the physical body. So I go into detail on the 5 sheets in that podcast number 37, but just to say here that when we're fearful or stressed, we know it affects our breath, our nervous system, our digestive system, that fight or flight mode. And therefore, it affects everything in our body. Everything is affected by the conditions we're in, be it if we have something in our lives that's causing us stress externally, or internally, that there is some repeating pattern, some trauma, some belief system from childhood maybe that's causing the stress internally, right?
Yes, I could not agree more with what you're saying. And, we have a 800 plus hour yoga therapy program. And one of the first things that we work on is yoga therapy for mental health. And people ask me, well, why do you have that as one of the first steps instead of back pain or knee pain or some of the physical maladies? And my answer is that oftentimes the mental manomaya, as you're saying, getting blocked up by anxiety and fear and stress, is causing the physical body to be, the blood sugar to be off, So I would rather back up and deal with the root cause. And then if there's still a knee problem or a back problem after we figure out what's going on in the mind, of course, we're going to go and work with that too. But the real crux of yoga therapy, in my opinion, is how do we get our mental game on? How do we stay in what I call the gold zone?
Beautiful. Exactly. Because you're clearing that layer, you're bringing that into balance. And then most often, right, other things start coming into balance.
And I don't know if you would agree with this. I think both yoga therapy and Ayurveda deal with body and mind. But a lot of people say that yoga therapy deals with the mind first and how it impacts the body, and that Ayurveda works with the body primarily, and how that impacts the mind. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. I would agree with, Ayurveda looks more at the digestion first. So it's looking more at the physical.
Right.
And
both are needed.
Both are needed, exactly. It's just a different approach. But Ayurveda really puts a lot of attention. That's why I would start with a cleanse. Because just like you're dealing with the mental sheet, with the cleanse, that could bring a lot of things back into balance without having to do separate functions for each
right.
part of the body. That it will automatically calm the mind down. That if we just get the digestion moving correctly, working properly, because a lot of times if we bring in herbs, or if we, or if the Agni, the fire element of the body, is not digesting our thoughts, it's not digesting our food properly, well, then we're not getting any nutrients from our food, or we're not getting any benefits from the meditation, because we literally can't digest it, because the Agni, the fire element of the body, is not working properly.
Right. And I mean, what we know now is that the gut, the microbiome, is 100% connected to our mental emotional states.
Right.
That a lot of what's happening with depression in your mind is actually a microbiome that has gotten very out of balance. So I think this idea of working with Ayurveda on the digestion and the microbiome, while at the same time getting a yoga therapy practice to really help you get more clarity in your life and more calmness and breathing and meditation, I think if you did that in combination, you would just see huge shifts in your mental state pretty quickly.
Absolutely. And I do think, the cleansing and the mindfulness and the yoga, pranayama, meditation, which we'll get into in a moment, all that needs to come together. Absolutely. Because it's a journey, right? It's a journey into that, into the more subtle layers of the body, which is our ultimate goal. So in Ayurveda, we tend to start, and in my programs, I tend to start with more the physical layer and then go more inwards into the physiology, then into the mental, and then more into the more subtle layers of consciousness. But there's many paths, and different paths work for different people, but it's all with the same goal at the end of the day, to bring the individual into balance so that they're thriving in life. What I'd love to talk about now is distinguishing a little bit between normal anxiety from an anxiety disorder. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Amy, but I would think that, identifying the cause of the anxiety first, if you can. Obviously, it's external. It's pretty easy probably to figure out. If it's internal and if it's a belief system, that may be a little bit more tricky. If it was a trauma you went through, obviously that's, pretty easy to figure out too. But identify the cause of the anxiety, and then look at the symptoms and see if they are reasonable or proportional response. If your worry, fears, or maybe intrusive thoughts, negative thoughts are interfering with your day-to-day life or your functioning, that may be considered an anxiety-related disorder. What do you think on that, Amy?
Yeah, I think we need to differentiate. Stress is supposed to be like a short-term cortisol release to help you fend off any kind of threat. That's what stress is supposed to be. Unfortunately, instead of acute cortisol release to help you get away from the threat, we have started living 24/7 under stress, which really is messing up your whole endocrine system and all this cortisol getting pushed out. So stress is supposed to be short term, and we can recover from that. And when we have fear, it's supposed to be an emotional response to a perceived threat that's right here, right now. Right. But again, we have started living in a way where we just live under constant fear, and it becomes really deeply imprinted into the brain due to a need for survival. And it's really difficult to kind of unbreak that neural network that has formed around fear, right?
Yes.
And so when you have these, stress and fear and anxiety that are supposed to be short term and then we're supposed to recover, when it starts becoming a lifestyle, that's when I think we get into these more anxiety related disorders where you just feel fear or stress or anxiety under normal conditions when there is no threat, and you catch yourself feeling anxious all the time. And if someone asked you, hey, why do you feel so anxious? You probably couldn't even say. You just say, I don't know. I feel like something bad is going to happen. So it's very difficult to get to the root cause. This is going back to what you said, is let's try to find the cause. I think for a lot of people, it's just become a habit or a pattern to be stressed and fearful and anxious. We call that a samskara. And so from my perspective with yoga therapy, I probably would work to pacify the symptoms of anxiety for a couple of weeks or months to try to just give the nervous system a little break. And then as we bring people down through pacification, eventually we might be able to weave back and find the causal mechanism of, was it trauma in early childhood? Was it trauma as an adult? Was it lifestyle choices? Is it a relationship that's causing you a lot of fear and anxiety? But from my experience, it takes a little bit of time to get there. And also, I would say, I love for people to be working with a psychologist at the same time that they're working with me. The yoga therapy puts them in a state where they can do proper psychology, meaning we calm their nervous system and get them into the parasympathetic, where they actually can figure out the causes and they can digest the undigestible emotions. So, that's just my thought on it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, because I do think there's different layers of anxiety, right? We talked about the normal day-to-day stress, but like you're saying, through lifestyle choices, through eating the wrong foods, living out of rhythm with the circadian rhythms, out of tune with nature, that this could cause a baseline stress or anxiety that some people don't even know they have, right? That it's just their normal way of being. And then I think it can go deeper and manifest deeper into the layers of the body, like we talked about, and become even more deep in the tissues and more deep in the subtle channels. So yes, I think that it depends on the individual. It depends on where their anxiety or stressor is coming from. Is it just, a surface or a subtle anxiety that you can manage through cleansing and lifestyle, dinacharya, and yoga and meditation and pranayama, or is it something deeper that needs a psychologist along with these other lifestyle choices and foods, etc., and just education around that. So yeah, it's very interesting. And I'd love to talk a little bit about now, well, what are some things that we could do to bring this anxiety to calm it down, to calm the nervous system. And as I said earlier, that in Ayurveda we would say it's excess vata that causes that aggravation, and then it causes aggravation in the mental emotional layer of the monomaya kosha. So I would love to talk a little bit about, well, what are some things that people could do to calm this vata aggravation? Do you want to start there?
Sure. So I recently did a Facebook Live on this, and I came up with 36 different just little natural lifestyle hacks that you can do that don't require money. And so that's on my Facebook page, Amy Wheeler Yoga, if anyone wants to go look at that.
Great.
But, the big things that I look at when people first come to me is, how are you sleeping? Because if you're only able to sleep 4 or 5 hours a night, any normal human being will experience anxiety during the day if they're not getting enough sleep, because their system is, hanging on for dear life, trying to get through the day. So the first thing I like to look at is, how are we going to get you a good night's sleep? Yes. And that could be through a gentle yoga practice with breathing and meditation and, possibly even some chanting. In the evenings before you go to bed, it could be take a hot shower before you go to bed, put some oil on different places in your body. It could be drinking some golden milk, an Ayurvedic insomnia remedy before you go to bed. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we can do to help someone get a really good night's sleep. And then once that's corrected, then I go to the morning and I say, okay, your morning routine is cortisol is highest first thing in the morning, and you need to discharge it. I need you to go for a power walk or do a bunch of sun salutations or some kind of movement in the morning to help you release that cortisol that is so high at that time. And then I want to talk about caffeine. If you drink 2 cups of coffee during the Vata time of day, it's not going to go well for you.
Right.
Can we push the coffee back a few hours when you have it with some food and maybe cut the amount in half? I did this recently. I was feeling anxious every morning when I woke up and I said, okay, I'm already getting a good night's sleep. I'm already working out in the mornings. So what's next? Okay, Amy, caffeine. You cannot have a cup of caffeine at 5:30 in the morning.
Right.
So now I'm trying to push it back until around 9 a.m. when I have some food.
Yes. So just to remind people there that Vata time is from 2 to 6 a.m. So try bring it later in the morning if you are going to have coffee.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Or like you're saying, if you're going to have it, maybe try to cut it in half or replace it. There's many wonderful coffee replacements. So now we've got the sleep, we've got the exercise in the morning, we've got the caffeine taken care of. Most people that I work with, by the time they do those 3 things, they're fine. And then if they're not, now we have to look at, okay, is this actually an anxiety-related disorder? Do we need to get a psychologist involved? Which of the 3 DSM-5 categories does it fall into? Is it an anxiety disorder? Is it OCD? Or is it trauma-related?
Right.
And then it gets a little more serious. You have to have more training. Like I said, maybe even partner up with a mental health professional and really understand your yoga therapy for mental health. And I can tell you a lot of people have mental health related problems. So all those yoga teachers out there and all those yoga therapists out there that have not been trained specifically in mental health, I think it's a huge area of growth for our field. As in terms of you want a job, you should really get into this tract of the field, but also this is what the world needs. This is important that we serve, I think, children in grade schools, all the way to people in geriatric homes. I mean, everyone needs this.
Absolutely. And while we're talking about this, can you mention your course? Because I know you have one coming up in January.
Oh, sure. So we have a 7-month program on yoga and yoga therapy for mental health, and it starts in January every year. And basically we do 9 days of training in January. It's in person in Southern California. And we go over anxiety, depression, OCD, childhood trauma, ACE scores, adult onset trauma, schizoaffective disorder, we ADHD, memory issues. We just really go deeply into a lot of mental health issues. And then from January to June, we have online lessons. And then we have another 9-day module in July, similarly, where we actually go over the specific conditions. And just to be clear, we're not trying to be psychologists. Right. But we need to know the language, we need to know the symptoms, we need to know the contraindications, we need to know the causal factors, and we need to know which yoga therapy tools in our toolbox will work best with one type of thing versus another,
Yeah, no, that's
so
such
it's intense.
Yes, and a wonderful course. And I do think it's important for people to be trained in this area because it is something that is in need, indeed, in the world right now. When we say that particularly in the States, over 40 million Americans are affected with anxiety-related disorders. So it's something that, yes, you need to know if you're out there doing yoga classes or working with people as a coach. It's really important to have that education. So I will put a link to your course in the show notes, Amy. Thank you for.
Oh, thank you.
My pleasure. So thank you for that. The talking about Vata the nighttime ritual, how important that is, the morning routine. And I know Vata, especially this time of year, as we talk about, and we've done a show particularly on this recently, where it's, autumn, winter in the Northern Hemisphere, and this is the time when Vata gets high. Now, when Vata is in balance, Vata energy is creativity and intuition and real excitement for life. But just to remind you, when it's imbalance, like we've been talking about, there can be an accumulation of Vata in the channel of the mind, causing that fear, the anxiety, the nervousness, the restlessness, maybe insecurity. You could be feeling confused, loneliness, depression, racing mind. So this is why we really want to make sure that we have some good practices in place for Vata. And other things that we could do, of course, is meditation. Meditation is just being still, really, and letting that the space between the thoughts, especially if you're suffering from a racing mind or just a restlessness in the mind. What do you think about that, Amy?
Yeah, I think there's many types of meditation, and many different types can work well. I think one of the things we have to be aware of when it comes to anxiety-related disorders and meditation and even pranayama, breathing techniques, is that sometimes when people bring the focus inward, they become more aware of how they're feeling, and it freaks them out. It makes it worse. So again, you need some training. You can't just throw meditation and breathing techniques at people and think that's going to heal their anxiety-related disorders. It actually might make it worse. And so we have to be very careful, which type of meditation we choose, which type of pranayama we choose. Talk to the person about, contraindications, and if this isn't helping you, please let me know as soon as possible. And a lot of times they'll come back and say, no, that makes it worse. And so then we have to find different ways to get in there and work with them that won't bring attention to the somatic feelings of anxiety in their body.
Exactly. Yeah. And so do you tailor it to each person?
Absolutely. In my opinion, it's not that yoga class isn't great. I teach group yoga classes 4 times a week, and I think they do people a lot of good. But that's more for the fear and stress and anxiety that just, comes up on a daily basis that we all have to deal with. When we're talking anxiety-related disorders, I think it has to be done one-on-one. Everyone is so unique and individual and reacts differently to the tools and technologies of yoga therapy.
Right. So can you tell us a little bit more? You got into just some simple things. First of all, you look at the nighttime ritual, the sleep, the morning routine, movement, and caffeine. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you would deal with a client who's come in with a more serious anxiety-related disorder? Yeah.
So this is where we can get more into the causal factors. So, for example, if someone's mother has died recently, and ever since she's died, they are short of breath, and they just have this general worry and fear that something bad is going to happen, and they just feel unsettled, like the carpet has been pulled out from underneath them or something. That's going to be very different. I would probably, ask them, are you okay with chanting? Are you not okay with chanting? Depending on what they said, I may put chanting in, I may not. Let's pretend they are excited about chanting. Well, then I say, was your relationship with your mother helpful to you or unhelpful to you? And if it was helpful and she gave the person strength, I might build a practice around the chant of Ma, just M-A, using asana with chanting to help them connect to their mother because it's helpful. Someone tells me they had a terrible relationship with their mother. Well, I'm obviously not going to choose the chant Ma. Right. That could really aggravate them. So, it really is almost like a puzzle that the client and I are doing together, negotiating, like, what could the cause be? And then based on the cause, what are your feelings around this particular thing I'd like to give you? You know, when I give meditation practices, oftentimes there's an object of meditation that we choose together. So, for example, I had a student a few years ago that her older sister had passed away unexpectedly, and she had a lot of anxiety and fear and stress because her older sister was her protector. And so I chose like 3 different objects, a lotus flower, a bird, and something else. And I said, do any of these appeal to you as your object of meditation? I'd like to build a practice around this. And she said, oh my gosh, the bird. She said, I know that every time birds come sit by me on a park bench or on a branch next to me, I know that's my sister coming to be with me. So we built this beautiful meditation practice around a bird that just gave her so much comfort and strength, and her anxiety reduced. So it's so individual. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach at all.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And it's the same with Ayurveda, right? It has to be tailored to each individual, because you just can't do blanket treatment for everyone. We're all so individual. But it's interesting what you say about the bird, because it is so true that having faith in something, whether it's meditation, prayer, whether it's a symbol like you're doing or the chanting, that faith is really comforting and also balancing for the Vata dosha, because there is that tendency towards fear and anxiety, that having faith or having something that you could go to, having something in your tool belt to know that you can go to that's going to restore that calm at moments when you feel that anxiety coming, you feel that stress or that fear. I think that is huge.
Right. And a lot of the work I do in yoga therapy around anxiety-related disorders is all around trust, faith. Right. We call it shraddha. And it doesn't have to be a religious thing,
Right.
You might just have faith in Mother Nature, Mother Earth. You might have faith in your family and really find comfort in the security of your family or your community. I know one gentleman who, he was an atheist, but his idea of faith was, I know when I reach out to someone in my close circle for help, they will be there for me. That's his faith. So we just have to help the person bring that to the surface and tune into it. And like you said, then Vata or fear naturally reduces.
Yeah, and that's what we're really doing, I feel, in Ayurveda and Yoga Therapy, is we're just reminding people of their natural inner state of calm. And like going back to earlier when I said that the layers are blocked, so that prana is not flowing, the nadis, the subtle channel, subtle energy is not flowing through the body. We can't access that consciousness. We can't access our bliss or truth, the truth of ourselves. So I think in us as practitioners in yoga therapy and Ayurveda, we're just reminding people of that nature that's within them, and we're just reminding them of how to get back to that state, because we all are born in that bliss state, right? As children, we're totally content, we're totally, in love with the world. There's hopefully, if we're in a good environment, there's no fear, there's no anxiety. But then as life comes in and we have different experiences, traumas, then these experiences affect us. But yeah, so I feel it's just reminding people that. And
I'm going to even back it up a little further and say, I don't feel all children actually have that beautiful description of what you described. I think we are conceived, the spark happens at conception. And, these vasanas, or these emotional imprints that could cause fear and anxiety and stress, they go all the way back to being in the womb.
Yes,
as the child, as the child is growing cell by cell from his or her mother's material, what the mother is feeling is directly being built into the tiny, tiny nervous system and the endocrine system that wraps around the nervous system in the womb. I mean, we're talking at 6 weeks old, you're already developing a spinal cord.
Yeah. No, it's so true. That matrix has been laid down laid down very young, and and as we say in Ayurveda, that your doshas are determined at conception.
Right.
But it's so true, Amy. Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree with you that anything that's going on in the mother's life or what's surrounding her as she's pregnant is completely affecting that baby as well. So, yes, and can you tell me a little bit more about maybe an example of a client that you have treated and how you treated them? Maybe with an anxiety-related disorder, if there's a particular case you could think of.
Yeah, there's so many to choose from, but I'll just, I had a young man who's 23 that when I first saw him could do nothing but growl at me with his arms crossed. He clearly was desperate for help, but he was so angry that he was living this way, right? And so some of the first things we did together were just to talk about his life and the fact that he had been born with cerebral palsy and that he had a childhood full of poverty and didn't get the medical attention he needed, that his father had died from a drug overdose, and just on and on and on. I mean, talk about layers of the matrix web being laid down. It was it was big. And there's such a protection around him. Every suggestion I make, he would just look down at the floor and shake his head no, like, I'm not going to do that. So it was very difficult because he had, basically what I call learned helplessness, that no matter what he does, it's not going to work anyway, so why bother?
Right. And can I ask you a question? Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. Did he come there of his own accord, or was it?
Yes.
Oh, he did. Okay, so that's interesting.
Yes. Yes, he wants help.
Yeah.
And he has trouble accepting help. And so, I went about my regular plan. Let's try this, try that. Everything was nope, nope, nope. Don't want to do that. Can't do that. And so I'm just taking really, really tiny baby steps with him. I'm giving him, just little meditations to listen to at night. I'll, send him my voice, talking him through a meditation, comforting him, I'll have him do little assignments. He has a lot of social anxiety, although he's desperate for a girlfriend. Oh. And so his assignments are things like, can you make eye contact and say hello to someone that you find attractive? And he can't, because what if they reject him? What if they don't say hello back? Right? So then, it's just little things. It's very little things. Obviously the evening practice and the morning exercise, he's already doing that. He's cutting back the caffeine, all the things I said, but it's just tiny little things. It's a lot of talking. He can't shut his eyes. So it's not like he's going to go into a deep meditation with his eyes closed. When I ask him to shut his eyes, he says, oh, hell no. He's like, I grew up in, south side of Los Angeles, and you don't shut your eyes for anything. Right?
Oh
so
gosh.
it's this idea of you have a big tool basket and you keep trying the different things. And sometimes, a lot of times, especially with kids, it gets very nonconformist, meaning I can't just be like, okay, close your eyes and long exhale. Like, that ain't happening,
Nuh-uh.
Right. And so you just take each person as they are. And for him, it is very slow going, very slow going. And I'm okay with that. He wanted to keep coming back. Yeah. He was getting something out of it. And it's just a matter of, he was really good about all the physical stuff, the caffeine, but when it came to actually getting in touch with his emotions, that's where he has a really hard time.
It's so great that he came there by himself. He wasn't told to go there by somebody, and that he's continuing to come back, which is really positive.
And can I tell you, and this is what we always say in yoga therapy, it's because he likes me and he knows I care about him. Oh. So the reason he keeps coming back is to spend time with me. really.
Right,
And
right.
he feels safe with me. And so if you don't have that kind of connection, that kind of heart connection where they feel safe and loved, and that you're not judging them, and that you're on their team and you only have their best interest in mind, you know, that's the crux of the issue.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. You know, that's beautiful in itself. And even if he's just in that environment with you for a short period of time, that he gets to let down his guard and he gets, you know, to feel your compassion and just to be in that energy. That's great. And,
you know, by the end of every session, he starts to see his own obstacles and he starts laughing at himself, and big smiles come on, and he'll start to say no, and then he'll stop and he'll laugh at himself and be like, I'm doing it again. I'm like, yes, you are.
That's great.
So, I mean, there's just little tiny realizations for him, emotional digestion. I'm not rushing him to be something he's not. He needs a lot of empathy and compassion for, I'm going to guess, a year before we really, really start to do things that are going to shift him from the inside out.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're making progress and you have patience, and you know you're not giving up on him.
I don't have an agenda. I don't. My self-esteem as a yoga therapist is not connected to his outcome. I think that's really important.
That's very important.
He's had a life of trauma, and he's not met me that long ago. And we're different races, and we're different ages, and we're different genders, and yet we still find that heart connection. And he's with a psychologist also that I know, and you know, so it's a beautiful unfolding. I think this is how we heal the world, is just doing this work one-on-one, meeting people where they are.
Yeah. And then a lot of times those people who are healed see the value in it, and then they go on to heal others too in their own way. So
100%.
It's a beautiful thing. So that's somebody who's dealing with, that young man's dealing with a lot of trauma from childhood. And what about OCD? Can you tell us a little bit about OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and have you treated anybody with that? And what's the difference there in that anxiety related disorder versus anxiety itself or trauma?
Yeah. So OCD could show up as like body dysmorphic disorder, where they actually see something different in the mirror than is really the reality of their body. For example, they are, 120 pounds and really look, very fit and lean. But when they look in the mirror, they actually could have up to a 30% shift towards being heavier, 30% heavier. Yeah. Like they look in the mirror and they see something else. So their perception is off. OCD could also be hoarding. I know a lot of people who do hoarding. Trichotillomania, where they're pulling little hairs out and having bald spots around. So there's a lot of different ways that OCD can show up. But, in a nutshell, it's recurrent and persistent thoughts. A lot of times they have urges or images that just keep coming up over and over. And especially when they get stressed out is when these urges or these images, tend to rear their ugly head. So, it's not an easy thing to deal with. It's definitely mano maya.
Right.
And trying to figure out how to replace these obsessive thoughts, or, it's not really that easy to let them go. I'll just say that.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a very, very difficult thing to work with. And again, we need a psychologist involved too. Sometimes we can channel the urge or the obsession into a more healthy behavior. So one thing that I often do is this thing called nyasam, which is basically to take your thumb and put it at the base of your pointer finger and slide it gently up to the fingernail of the pointer finger, and then slide it back down to the base of the pointer finger. And then you move the thumb to the middle finger and you do the same thing, slide it up, slide it down. This is very soothing to the nervous system. It's an actual yogic technique. this, they could sit in class, they could do it anywhere. They could just do this sliding of the fingers, which, maybe that's, they're going to have OCD that I need to slide my fingers all day, every day. Right. But that's a little bit better than some of the other things like hand washing, 50 times a day, or, that type of things. So, or picking the hair and having bald spots, that's much. So sometimes we try to replace the behavior with something that, some yoga technique that can help them. Because sometimes you can use the OCD in a positive way if they're really stuck on repetition of a word, let's say, that they just keep having this urge to repeat this mental word in their head. Well, we could give them a mantra. We could give them an affirmation. Yep. So now their OCD is being used to create a positive samskara in their mind. So if the old repetitive thought was someone's going to get me, someone's going to get me, someone's going to get me, we could change that to something like Om Pahi, which means I am protected. So every time they feel scared, they start in their mind's eye chanting Om Pahi, I am protected. I'll tell you a quick little story. I hope that's okay.
Yes, please.
So when I was in India doing my internship, there was a woman who came in and she had terrible, terrible OCD and fear. And she told us that when her husband and children would leave the house every day, she would be left alone there cooking, and that all of the evil spirits were coming to basically make fun of her and torture her during the day while everybody was at work. And she said that when everybody came home, well, all the spirits left. So that's why nobody ever saw it. And when she came in, she was just bedraggled. I mean, she just was hunched over and so scared and so sad and asking us to help get rid of these spirits. And so, the intervention was that whenever she was cooking, she was going to chant Gayatri mantra, and she was going to bring light into the room, and that the demons and the spirits could not handle being in the same vibration as Gayatri mantra. And so that's what she did all day long. She chanted Gayatri mantra while cooking, while cleaning. 3 weeks later, she came in for another session, and she looked like a completely different person. Right? So that's clearly she has some mental illness. I mean, definitely has some mental illness, but through proper choice of mantra and intervention, she was able to make the best of her mental illness. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And there's still a ways to go. This is not the end of the story, but you can see why it needs to be individualized.
Absolutely. But just taking that initial, that trauma away, her daily trauma of having these spirits around her, with just swapping it out for the Gayatri mantra. That's beautiful. And
a big part of the intervention was teaching her Gayatri mantra.
Right.
Getting actually chant and repeat until she had it down.
Yeah. And then just putting the focus on something else so that the mind wasn't going off into that other realm, right? The Vata mind wasn't spinning out of control.
Yeah, she was bringing light. She was bringing pitta into the vata.
There you go. Exactly. And, thank you for sharing those stories on the more serious anxiety related disorders. And we're going into holiday season now, right? We've got Thanksgiving in the US and then Christmas coming up as well. And this can lead to anxiety also. And particularly for those people who are suffering from anxiety-related disorders, and for some of us who just feel it in our normal day-to-day lives. So I think it is important during this time is to set your intention for how you would like your holidays to be, even before the madness starts. How would you like this holiday season to be? I'm sure nobody would sign up for a stressful, anxiety-ridden holiday season. So I really would encourage you to think about how you want this season to be. Do you want you to be frazzled running around buying gifts, or are you going to think differently this year? Maybe make a pact, with your friends or family that, okay, we're not going to buy gifts for everyone going? How about we all go and have an experience somewhere, or have a day out or something like that, or a weekend away? But I think it's important to think about it in advance so that you're not getting caught up. We know we're in Vata season, and being in Vata season and then getting caught up with the stress of the holidays can really be a recipe for disaster in regards to stress and anxiety and worry.
I completely agree. And I think now, we're early November, is the time to put your strategy in place. Mm-hmm. So are you going to do a bath with oil every evening? Is that going to be, your thing between now and January? Yeah. Are you going to go into a sauna? I have a sauna on my deck, and my husband, it's just getting really cold here. And he said, it's that time of year. Let's start using the sauna.
Oh, nice.
Bring the Vata down.
Yes.
So, he and I said, this is the time of year we're going to spend 30 minutes together just chatting about our day in the sauna every night.
Beautiful.
And so finding these rituals and these routines and putting them in place now, because everything that you do now is building a foundation and setting you up for what's about to hit on the third week of November, Thanksgiving, where the family and the friends and the overeating and the too much stimulation and it's all going to begin. So let's lay the foundation to bring Vata down for a couple of weeks before we even get to that holiday season.
Absolutely. And like Amy said, your dinacharya, your daily self practices are key to keep in place as much as you can throughout the holiday season. I've done episodes just purely on those. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and check out the dinacharya daily habits episode. And making sure that your sleep, there will be parties, there will be nights out, but then on the other nights, try to get to bed early, making sure that you're keeping your breath work, your pranayama, your meditation as much as you can in place. Breath work and meditation should be a key daily, that you can just do a few minutes, when you wake up in the morning before you get out of bed, do, 2-3 minutes of pranayama and breath work. And again, I have a pranayama tutorial of different breath work, and I'll put the link in the show notes for you if you haven't checked that out before. And you could do 5 minutes of meditation just to start your day really grounded and still. So you're not starting your day with a spinning mind. Just start with a really good energy of calm and still, and bring some space between your thoughts before you get into your day. So really important. And I like the idea of thinking about experiences instead of gifts, because we're buying lots of gifts for people, and a lot of times we're buying gifts that people don't even want, but we have to check off the gift list, right? And I think my family started doing this, that we started just having an experience. So what we do, rather than getting gifts at Christmas, well, of course we get them for my nieces and nephews and stuff, but we go away for a weekend away in February to this little family hotel in the southern southeast coast of Ireland, and it's on a little beach, and we're there for the weekend, and we don't go anywhere, and we're just hanging out. We're just in one place, everybody hanging out. There's a lot of us. There's 22 people. So, wow. But that's what we do. Instead of buying these gifts, we just spend some time together. So I really cherish that. And if you have children who are at an age where you can talk to them about, instead of a gift, how about we have a day out somewhere, or an experience somewhere together and spending quality time together.
Right. I completely agree. And also just thinking about letting each other know how much we love each other and care about each other, whether we write a poem or make a silly video, or, a lot of times those are the things that people hold on to long term. The coffee maker comes and ends up in the landfill. But I guarantee if we wrote a heartfelt letter or something like that, it's very easy for people to save and cherish and read again and again. And just having had my mother pass away recently, I really wish I had done more of that, to just tell her on a regular basis how much she meant to me and how much I appreciated her and felt supported by her. Looking back now, I think, I should have done that every year. There should have been a yearly acknowledgement of her contribution to my life. And I regret that. So I'm kind of looking down that road. It's inexpensive. It is something they can hold on to. It's something deep, something that they know you know they matter.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Amy. And I know you yourself and your mom had a very special relationship. You mentioned her a lot of time on the show, and I'm so sorry for your loss. And but I appreciate you sharing that wisdom with us, that, for those of us who have our parents around, or people, of course, that are dear to us, cherish that, because life is very fragile, and to take time to appreciate one another and to share those words and be courageous, even if it's something you don't normally do. Be that courageous person in the family. And that's why I love the Thanksgiving holiday in the US, because it's literally giving thanks, and you get to, there's no gifts, there's no commercial. Well, there's a little bit of commercial stuff around it, but not too much. But it's giving thanks. And then some people have traditions about going around the table saying, what do you give thanks for this year? And I think that's beautiful. I really cherish that holiday. In fact, I often celebrate it here. Yeah,
it's a beautiful holiday.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the best one.
It is, indeed.
In my opinion.
Indeed. Well, that's great words of wisdom there, Amy, to tell those around you how you feel about them, and that could be the most beautiful gift of all. You don't have to spend lots of money, on the holidays, or be frazzled trying to buy online or going around the stores. Just words and time together is a beautiful thing. And so we will leave it there today, folks. Thank you so much, Amy, for all your great information and wisdom on this subject of anxiety and managing the deeper anxiety related disorders. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about something that I'm so passionate about. And it's really my mission in life is to help, especially, women, figure out how to deal with this, because it's so prevalent.
Yeah. Well, in the stats, we did say that women are more likely than men to suffer from PTSD. And we definitely know that women are under a lot of pressure these days, trying to manage so many things in their lives. So, yeah, it's something that it's information that needs to be out there. The stigma needs to be released from it, and definitely we need to have more awareness around it. On that note, can you just remind us of your course in January, please?
Oh, sure. So it's if you go to www.amywheeler.com, you'll see a tab along the top that says trainings, and just go to the mental health training, yoga and yoga therapy, mental health training.
Wonderful.
And yeah, we're looking forward to it.
So, and is that for public as well as for people in the yoga field?
It would depend. You do need to have some yoga background to join us. So it would be one of those things where I'd have a personal phone call with you and kind of gauge your experience level, and
Perfect. Great. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll put that link in the show notes for everybody. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Amy. Take good care of yourself, and I look forward to chatting with you soon.
Me too. Thank you.
Take care, my dear. Bye-bye. So there you go. Lots of great tips there from Amy on managing anxiety-related disorders, and also just managing daily stress and worry and fear and anxiety by calming the Vata dosha. So don't forget to check out the poll on the Elements of Ayurveda Facebook page. I'll put a link in the show notes. Or if you want to contact me, you can do so on my website, elementshealingandwellbeing.com. You'll find the link in the show notes also. And if you're enjoying the content, please subscribe to the show so new episodes will automatically download for you. And if you wish, rate and review it. I would really appreciate that, because that helps other people to find the show. And that means we can spread this wisdom of Ayurveda to more people, bringing more and more people into balance. And that is the ultimate goal, to have people thriving in life. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. And I look forward to connecting with you soon. Ciao for now.